7 o'clock and everybody's here, so let's get started. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Albany Transportation Commission, our special meeting to cover the months of November and December. Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Barnes.
Present.
Commissioner Javindel.
Present.
Commissioner McCroskey.
Present.
Commissioner Peng.
Present.
Commissioner Vihil McClanahan.
Present.
Commissioner Von Neidigan.
Present.
Chair Tomsky.
Present. Thank you. I'll read the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. At this point in the meeting, we take public comment on items that are not on the agenda. I'm going to guess that many people here are planning to comment on items not on the agenda. Can I have a show of hands for how many of you want to comment on an item not on the agenda tonight? Just a couple? Okay. All right, please go ahead.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the work that you do to make Albany a more bikeable and walkable city. My name is Jonathan Knight, and I've lived in Albany on Santa Fe Avenue for 22 years. A few of us are here tonight, mostly to show support from the 900 block of Santa Fe, because we have a speeding problem that has not been addressed in quite a number of years. So our block is the one that connects Solano Avenue to Marin. And it is a 25-mile-per-hour residential street. It looks a bit wider than other streets maybe, and there are traffic lights at both ends, which might account for people going very rapidly up the road to try to catch the light or down the road. But in any case, the speeds are quite high. So in 2009, we petitioned the city for traffic calming measures. The speed survey showed that the 85th percentile was 30 miles per hour. Basically, 1 in 7 cars was going 5 miles an hour over the limit. The top speed was 42 miles an hour. By those criteria, we qualified for traffic calming measures. However, there was a cap of 3,000 cars per day, average daily volume, that disqualified us. We had something like 4,000. So it's not that we had too few speeders to qualify, we had too many. It was a bit frustrating for us as a block because, of course, speed creates extra noise, it creates extra hazards, it creates stress. We have a lot of kids growing up on the street, and many kids go down to Marin School on their bikes or walk down the sidewalk every single day, Marin being just down on the corner. Fast forward to 2021, and we had heard that the 3,000 car cap had been lifted, so we petitioned again for traffic calming measures. The speed survey was done and presented here in June 2022. And it showed that we were one of the top 5 blocks in the city that had been surveyed for speed, number of cars going over the limit. That number doesn't really inform in the way the previous numbers did, because if everyone went 26 miles an hour, I don't think we'd have a problem. But what we see is 30, 35, and occasionally 40 miles per hour going up the road. So we came here tonight just to show that we as a block are very interested in having something done as soon as possible, whether it's restriping or whether it's speed humps or speed tables or some combination of the above. So we are hoping that that can be done very soon. We've heard that the city might be putting things off until some other project is going on, such as repaving, but we don't need repaving. We won't need it for a decade. So it's urgent that something be done sooner than that. Thank you for your time and thank you for your work.
Thank you for your comment. Before we take the next speaker, I want to get a sense of how many of you are here to support this idea and are not going to speak, just so we can have on the record that you're here to support that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of you. Okay, so there are 8 folks who showed up tonight to echo the comment we just heard and are not going to take their own 3 minutes to say it. I just want it on the record that they're all here. Thank you. Do we have another speaker? Go ahead.
Commissioners and city staff, my name is Ken Jung. I've been a resident of the 900 block of Santa Fe Avenue since 2007. I work at the City of Berkeley as a supervising civil engineer in the transportation division and have overseen numerous projects that include traffic calming measures. I'm here to urge the city to implement much-needed traffic calming measures on the 900 block of Santa Fe Avenue. A few things about our block. We're located between Solano and Marin with traffic signals at both intersections. I've noticed cars driving fast, especially during commute hours, to try to get through both signals when they're green. Our street slopes downward to the south toward Marin at a moderate slope. Cars speed in both directions, but especially downhill toward the south. Marin School is immediately adjacent to our block. A lot of school kids walk on our street to get to and from school. Our street is a designated city bike route and has sharrows. As a result, we have frequent bike traffic, including children riding on the roadway. The most recent speed survey by the city indicates our block is having the 5th most number of vehicles driving above 25 miles an hour, with almost 2,000 cars per weekday driving over the 25 mile an hour speed limit. Albany's active transportation plan indicates the Solano intersection as having 15 to 30 collisions in the 10 years from 2000 to 2009, and 31 to 45 collisions at the Marin intersection. In my 16 years of living here, I distinctly recall a few events related to speeding. A southbound car collided with my car as my wife was backing out of our driveway. There have also been a number of near misses. As a result, a number of us park our cars on the street. A westbound car on Marin, turning northbound onto Santa Fe, flipped onto its side. And a northbound car on Santa Fe Avenue swerved to avoid a car backing out of a driveway, causing the speeding car to flip upside down on its roof. There are probably more that don't immediately come to mind. I'm sure some of my neighbors have observed many other similar kinds of events. Per the city's traffic calming policy, we've fulfilled the initial steps by submitting a request to the city, meeting the conditions for consideration, and having a speed survey performed. We've been waiting about 14 years to get to the next step, in which the city would develop design recommendations and review with the residents. For the safety-related reasons I mentioned, I respectfully request that the city prioritize the 900 block of Santa Fe Avenue to implement traffic calming measures as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment about an item not on tonight's agenda?
Chair Chomsky, we have someone online that has raised their hand.
Oh, online, okay.
Steve, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Steve Allicott. I'm here with my wife, Joan, and we live near the corner of Brighton and Cornell. We've lived here for 27 years, and during that time, we have seen many, many accidents on our corner, including 2 in the past few weeks where a car on each ended up on the sidewalk. One of those events was a children's party on the sidewalk about to begin with 10 to 15 children participating. So, as I've said, we've seen many accidents and many near accidents. So we'd like to consider, we would like to implement, if possible, a 4-way stop sign on the corner of Brighton and Cornell. When the plaza opened up many years ago, more and more traffic is coming out of the plaza toward Berkeley. Cars are speeding down Brighton at probably 35 to 40 miles an hour. People at the stop signs on Cornell are looking both ways and then proceeding, not seeing the speeding cars. So we would like for the commission to consider a 4-way stop sign on that corner. And Joan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think that what happens, you know, where the other intersections are on Brighton going up to the middle school is that they are four-way stops. And I think sometimes people think it's a four-way stop and they pull out. So that, I don't know, but that could be causing some of the problems. And we're just really concerned for all the students who walk up Brighton Avenue and, you know, are unsafe with a situation like this.
Yeah, we really feel like this is an accident waiting to happen, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, we hope that it doesn't wait longer. We tried a petition years ago to the commission, and it wasn't changed for many years. So please hear our plea. We are representing many folks on our block who hope this can happen. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else online?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised. If someone does like to address the commission for public comment, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom.
Okay.
This is a little unusual, but my neighbors are here, and I would like to inform them of a point of order that's important. It's good to see you here. I, as a commissioner, have to recuse myself from dealing with the issue of any issue on the 900 block because I live within 500 feet. So whatever I may think about your issue, I won't be responding here at the commission. We can talk privately. Thank you.
And of course, the rest of the commissioners can't respond tonight either because it's not on the agenda, but I think staff can inform the public of of what projects may be underway related to those two locations.
Yeah, I can relay what I communicated to the residents that reached out to the commission. We did implement several traffic calming measures that had been waiting this year, but we haven't unfortunately gotten to the design of the ones that were recommended. Apologies, I know folks have been waiting patiently, and I've indicated that plan is to get concepts in front of the residents in the first quarter of 2024.
This is about Santa Fe, right?
For the traffic calming measures that were recommended at the Commission's last discussion of traffic calming, including Santa Fe,
Okay.
but not just Santa Fe. There were
I'm wondering if
other
you had a
blocks.
separate report to make about Brighton and Cornell.
For the Brighton and Cornell,
But let's finish the Santa Fe first. I just wanted to clarify which one you were responding. Are you responding to both?
that was
of those
for
right now?
traffic calming requests that the Commission took for blocks. So that includes Santa Fe. That does not include the inquiry regarding the Brighton and Cornell intersection. That one is the relevant project for that is the North Albany traffic calming project. That was sort of an area plan that was put together following development in the plaza. The treatments along Brighton are still planned. There is a relatively major sewer project that we have in the pipeline, so our current timeline for delivery is really once that occurs, that's going to be digging up Brighton. That's when we would be implementing the Brighton measures once that is done.
Do you have any timeline on that sewer project?
We'll be updating the CIP early this coming year. That should put a timeline on that.
Okay, so regarding 900 block of Santa Fe, I'm sorry, I was confused about which location you were talking about, and I wasn't able to fully process what you said about it. Can you repeat what the timeline and next steps are?
The next step is to develop concepts for traffic calming measures for the blocks that the commission recommended proceed to design, and the intention there is that we would have those to roll out to present to the residents and then the commission after that in first quarter of next year.
First quarter of next year, okay. So is there anything else staff wanted to say about these issues while everybody's here? Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. You're welcome to stay for the meeting if it's not too soporific.
wouldn't actually speak, but some of the letters were addressed directly to me.
Is your mic turned on? I didn't know if your mic was turned on.
Oh, I was leaning back, sorry.
Let's move on to item 3-1, police data.
Thank you, Chair. This is reporting out on the month of October. There was 1 pedestrian-involved collision, 0 bike-involved collisions reported, and I've shifted the values slightly to show a bar when there's a 0 for communicating the months per last month's discussion here. There were 8 collisions reported, 2 of which were reported as injury collisions. 30 moving citations were issued, and 0 DUI arrests were made. That concludes the report.
Any questions from commissioners? Any public comment online?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Any comments from the commission?
For the moving violations, those are mostly speeding tickets, I imagine, or, you know, like illegal turns? I don't really know the data. I'm not really, like, I'm unfamiliar with it, like what that is going to mean, really, I guess.
I can inquire if there's a breakout of.
Based on my observations, possibly mostly like people didn't stop for the stop sign. That happens a lot in my neighborhood.
I just wanted to express thanks for the change in the bar chart. It makes it a lot clearer to me where the months are and where the zeros are. So, any other comments about this matter? Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar, which consists only of the meeting minutes. Would anybody like to pull the meeting minutes out for discussion? Anybody online?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Javindal?
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Peng?
Yes.
Commissioner Vihil McClanahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Von Neidingen?
Aye.
Chair Chomsky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And now we start our substantive discussions in item 5, 5-1, Citywide Streetlighting Evaluation.
I'll welcome up James Sorelli to introduce this item.
Good evening, commissioners. For anybody online that's not familiar, I'm James Sorelli. I'm an associate engineer with the Public Works Department. So we are nearing the end of our citywide street lighting evaluation. In July, we completed our streetlight inventory, our existing conditions report. In September, we had a public workshop to gather some public feedback as well as demonstrate in live demonstrations of how different street lighting configurations look and how the terms, all these crazy terms, actually look when you're seeing the light in action. In September, we were also here at the Transportation Commission to just generally go over street lighting and existing conditions. So tonight, we're going to review the process and where we're at. A big thing to discuss tonight is the guidelines, kind of the process of how they were generated and examples of how they're applied for the city of Albany and what they look like when applied. And I just kind of pull it back to, on the purpose of this evaluation. We want to understand our existing conditions within Albany, which includes an inventory that we now have. We wanted to design guidelines, so when we're doing kind of streetlight design, we have specifications and we have a uniform intentional approach around the city. And we want some immediate actions that we can actually, perform with existing funding. And also with this evaluation, get a magnitude of what are some of the long-term improvements for safety and visibility that'll help, allow us to determine what kind of funding or programmatic approach we'll need in the future to actually get those kind of projects off the ground, as well as the kind of maintenance costs that all of this would involve. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dane Sanders, our consultant with Clanton and Associates, to go through this with you.
Good evening. Thanks to all for coming back to this conversation after we had a presentation about a month ago or so. So I'm going to give you an update of where we are and how we've taken public comments and incorporated that into our recommendations. I'm going to pull up my presentation here. It was really great to have an opportunity to come out to the city and have conversations with actually a number of you on the commission that joined our street lighting demonstration, and we have data to share from that. This was our timeline. We started back in April. We've done all the inventory and data gathering, prepared our existing conditions reports. Then we developed the guidelines, the street lighting guidelines and features that provide, as James was talking about, the kind of standard specifications and the guidelines for any future design to follow these for consistency across the city. We brought that to about 50%, and then we did the demonstration and have taken the demonstration data and feedback that we got during our public engagement process to understand what are the final recommendations and priorities. We are still working on the costs, so we don't have any costs to share today, but we are getting, narrowing in on this 90% for final review and then getting that over to City Council by January. So there are a lot of different things to consider when we're looking at outdoor lighting and street lighting. Some of the common things we think about are visibility and safety and security. But there's a number of other things we need to be considering in how light at night particularly affects our sleep patterns and long-term health. To things like design aesthetics, costs, maintenance, energy, all play a role in ongoing costs and the life cycle, and also for reducing energy use, which has been a great effect of LED technology. The LEDs that are currently in your city are probably installed more than 10 years ago and are experiencing end-of-life failures. So there's a need now to maintain those and replace them. So also, what is the responsible use of light at night? That we're not spilling light into the night sky, not spilling light into residence and bedroom windows, and the impacts of light on wildlife and the environment. So as part of our community engagement, we did this. This is a photo of one of the exercises we did that we gave 3 stickers to each person that attended and asked, what are your top 3 concerns in your community, to see what kind of priorities there are. And it seemed that, pedestrian visibility and safety by far was the greatest concern. Then it kind of seems to be a tie between a number of things, cyclist visibility and safety, to safety and security, appropriate lighting for safety and security. There was an interest in using the you know, what is the color temperature? What is the color of that light? Is that appropriate for the neighborhood, for the city? And there's, you know, a lot of it is the concern about underlighting, not enough light throughout Albany. I think a lot of that may be a result of the existing kind of condition and failures throughout the city. There's also a concern about overlighting, providing too much light, and that this is done responsibly and supporting dark skies. So understanding this, we've brought that into our recommendations to see what's the responsible way to expand the lighting to provide for the pedestrian and cyclist safety and visibility. We went through a Street Lighting 101 presentation. There are a lot of technical terms that some people may not be familiar with. Part of the reason for taking people out into the environment there and looking at it is that they can experience what we're talking about with those, with the different metrics and technical terms. This is a photo of one of the demonstrations we did. This intersection here that is in a residential neighborhood, a collector in a local street with, you know, marked pedestrian crossing, currently only lit by one streetlight in a corner. We were looking at how multiple angles of light is important to provide proper vertical illumination on pedestrians crossing the crosswalks. So we used this bucket truck to add another light for the demonstration. We also went through different color temperatures of light, and we tested those color temperatures at different dim levels to see what is the appropriate level of light and what do people, you know, how well can people see under lower levels of light. The responsible use of light is really making sure we're utilizing the light where it's needed, you know, covering the right-of-way, sidewalk to sidewalk in the street, but not into homes, reducing glare and eliminating uplight. So in that, some of the lights that we used in the demonstration included two different shields. There is what's called a house side shield that limits the backlight from spilling onto the home. The way that this particular louvered shield works, it also ends up reducing the glare and the light across the street. And then this other shield here reduces the view, the high angle light coming out of the luminaire that really just creates glare, and therefore also contributes to reduced visibility. So this shield helps reduce the glare, improve visibility, and kind of from a distance it kind of conceals the light source. So it's only when you're really in the pool of light that you could see the light source. We had talked in our Street Lighting 101 last time about the complexities of the sort of perception of brightness and light level, that creating just more light does not always create more visibility. In fact, at times it's really reducing the light level. So this is the 16th Street Mall in Denver, where the original lighting here was high pressure sodium. It dumped a lot of light in this area, almost 3.5 foot candles average. But the sidewalks were lower light level. There's actually, in some cases, up to 20 foot candles of light in some of these areas, which actually is wasted light and not really providing for good visibility. In fact, it makes areas with less light look darker. By reducing that light and spreading it out further, we were able to create much better visibility with less light, less energy use, and improved color rendering. all of which kind of helps liven the space and improve visibility and safety. So glare control is a really important thing for not just light level, but glare control, because glare will actually reduce your visibility. So I'm going to share some data from our street lighting demonstration, looking at the different dimming levels, the different light levels. We tested out the lights at the 100% level, basically meets the Illuminating Engineering Society criteria for that particular intersection or street. Then we dimmed down from that criteria to 50% of the criteria, and then to 25% of the criteria. You can see both some scatter plot and then a trend line for the data. So what we see often in many cities that we've done these kind of surveys in is that the preferred light level, which really with this scale over here, 3 was kind of was preferred. Anything above 3 was getting to be too bright. Anything below is too dark. So yeah, certainly some of the it's interesting the kind of spread of different data and differing opinions. Some people think that 50% is too bright. Some people too dark. I can't entirely explain why it coalesces and people actually thought it was better in some case at 25%, a little bit more narrow of a band. But we often see somewhere around 70 to 80% of IES criteria with white light LED is what the preference is. So there's actually some energy savings by reducing light level from IES criteria. That's a possibility. Then we look at the light on the sidewalk, and we see still just a bit below the 100%. It was maybe preferred according to the trend line. Then we look at glare. Now there probably can be really these glare really would never go down below the perfect. So 3 here would be kind of the minimum level for glare. But there were certainly some, at that higher level, people experienced some glare, and as the lights dimmed, experienced less glare. Then we also look at light trespass, kind of a similar thing. There's can be probably 3 is kind of the minimum, and preferred, maybe the preferred as well. But there was definitely an experience of light trespass, even with the shielding, apparently. But I think from the measurements that we took, the shields did do a lot of work to keeping light spill off of the homes and keeping it, focusing it better on the streets. We also looked at the color temperatures, and as the color temperature, the higher the color temperature, the more blue content is in that, and the lower color temperature is warmer. We tested from 2700 Kelvin to 5000 Kelvin with some of the existing lights that are, I believe that was from Solano, some of the pedestrian lights along Solano. We certainly see that the 5000 Kelvin people considered as too high. There's kind of a split in the opinion of 2700 to 4000. This trend line would maybe indicate that somewhere around 3500 would be a preferred color temperature. What we understand when we're thinking about, the blue content of light is what ends up affecting our sleep patterns at night. So we know that more blue content suppresses melatonin and can keep people from getting good night's sleep. Now, certainly, light in your bedroom window, we're trying to control that with shielding. So you shouldn't have street lighting coming in your window. Streetlight, for driving purposes and walking around at night doesn't have a huge health impact. You're not living under that light. So having that light level in your bedroom would be bad. But we want to make sure we're providing for visibility and safety and security as well. So the trends in California, in fact, the state of California had a bill earlier this year that has not quite gone through, but will probably come back again, that will make 2700 Kelvin the maximum color temperature for state facilities. So that we would recommend that you go with the 2700 Kelvin, and that's what the recommendation is in the design guidelines. Just a image that shows 2200 Kelvin to 4000 Kelvin, and what that might feel like in the experience. 2700 Kelvin is kind of the typical, what you would think of as an incandescent light in your home that we are historically used to. Went through the lighting inventory, and you have now a full database of all of your lights with photos and lots of other things that create a really good amount of information for the city to utilize and make decisions coming up. So as we were taking this feedback from the public engagement and understanding, like, okay, how can we expand the usage of lighting to support pedestrians and cyclists, while also understanding budgetary constraints and things like that through the city. Wanted to focus really on these, utilize what you already have developed with the priority sidewalk network and the bikeways, the class, particularly like the class 2 and class 3 bikeways that are on streets. And also looking at the collision data filtered for non-daytime, that after, and actually looking at from dusk to darkness, and which ones of those were pedestrian or bicycle related. And looking at those, that the ones with the red circle have been identified, that maybe overlaying this data with the light levels or the lighting in the area, that they are also darker areas. There may be some areas that have collisions but are also well lit, and it may not be lighting that is creating the issue there. So the ones that are highlighted in red are more likely to be lighting being a contributing. We also had an online survey that we measured 10 different sites throughout the city and photographed these sites and then put them out for people to go and tour and on their own and fill out surveys to identify those issues there. So we're compiling that data to be able to also inform our final decisions here. Looking at the different existing streetlights, typically these more utilitarian looking lights are called Cobra heads. And that's probably the majority of the lights that you have throughout the city. There are different outputs, different lumen values that come from, depending on whether it's a local street or an arterial street, to have more light on an arterial than your local streets. You also have some more historic and pedestrian scale style lights along Solano that it can create some light trespass issues if in the existing ones do have some light trespass, particularly where there are some apartments along Solano, and this globe light to the pedestrian light on Masonic Avenue and under the Ohlone Greenway BART tracks, more of a industrial surface-mounted downlight. So looking at some of our street lighting design guidelines and considerations, we start with lighting warrants. There are some things that, according to the Illuminating Engineering Society and Federal Highway Administration, some contributing factors to whether to light or not to light. Does it require lighting? Speed limit, and whether headlights cover a safe stopping distance, and collision history. So we've been looking at those things. Local streets at 25 miles an hour, the speed limit does cover that safe stopping distance. So according to the warrants, it's not saying you have to light this street. In fact, so residential streets, it's more like, does the community want to light that street for usage at night? And there is no specific criteria that must be met to on those local residential streets. But what's the desire from the community? So once we do have a lighting criteria, and we are going to light that continuously, is when we need to provide, or looking at providing more uniform lighting. But that depends, the lighting criteria depends on the street classification, adjacent land use, and pedestrian activity. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all for lighting at night. The criteria is dependent on where you are in the city. Same with the strategies, those lighting strategies, whether to use streetlight scale or pedestrian scale. So streetlights tend to be from 25 to 35 foot height, where pedestrians lights are more like 12 to 15 foot height. What the lighting layout is, luminaire selections, we're providing guidance for all of these things. And then with the lighting applications, we have that criteria and strategies that apply to intersections, crosswalks, streets, priority sidewalks, and Class 1 bikeways. So, as we said, these strategies depend on the adjacent land use. So we are looking at whether continuous street lighting is required or encouraged there to some areas that may only have lighting at intersections. Non-continuous lighting means that it is more for wayfinding, to see from one light to the next, but does not provide continuous light meeting a uniformity criteria, where continuous lighting would also meet uniformity criteria. So we're looking at some of the responsible, light at night, controlling backlight, uplight, and glare. There are values that are shown on the lighting cut sheets that give those ratings. So you can identify from a cut sheet, does this meet the criteria for this particular area? And then the color temperature, we've recommended the 2700 Kelvin across the city. So looking deeper into these guidelines, each of the guidelines you start with the street classification. So there's a table similar to this for arterial, collector, and local. I'm showing the local table here. Go to find so we're on a local street within a certain adjacent land use. There may be some different options available, whether it's street lighting only, pedestrian lighting only, or a combination of street and pedestrian lighting. Continuous or non-continuous or intersections only. Color temperature is uniform throughout the city. And then it tells you, based on this strategy, here's the streetlight type. What is that luminaire type reference that has associated with it lumen values, backlight, uplight, glare ratings, all the specifications that you need to make the decision and engineer the project, and a spacing range with lumen outputs and mounting heights. Then the intersections also have sort of generalized recommended layouts that, you know, one light or two lights at this intersection would not be sufficient to light and, you know, something on a wide arterial. So how many lights do you kind of need to provide the adequate lighting for the different types of intersections? And what are the type references and lumen outputs related for those? So now, as we're looking into the final, you know, evaluation and the costs and priorities, we're looking at what would fall under near-term improvements, what, you know, under existing budgets, maintenance budgets, things like that, that replacing the failing lights throughout the city. There's only so many you can do within your current budget per month, but that's something that would start pretty much immediately, that utilizing the specification that we've provided and through the selection of what's the appropriate thing for that area, which should provide the appropriate light level, color, temperature, shielding. And then there are also, in our existing conditions evaluation, we identified tree trimming, and where there is a map showing where some of those tree and light conflicts occur. In the midterm, looking at supplemental improvements where we might be able to use some of the existing infrastructure. We already have a lot of streetlights on utility poles. It may be adding another light to a utility power pole that doesn't have one currently. But, you know, looking at particularly what intersections and crosswalks would provide the most safety improvement impacts. And considering those additional lighting near schools where children are crossing, especially this time of year, where it's getting dark early and there's more pedestrian activity in, you know, darkness hours. 2 longer-term comprehensive improvements for larger streetscape projects, and adding maybe more continuous lighting along some of especially arterial bike lanes. And then looking at the other bikeways and priority sidewalks. So through our analysis, and, you know, we basically worked with our GIS consultant to identify the spacing of each streetlight that's existing and compare that against the spacing tables that we've provided, whether you're local collector or arterial streets. So all of the criteria from the tables is built into this analysis to identify where, you know, where lighting is too far apart and probably needs, if we're going to provide continuous lighting along some of these streets, that these ones, you know, marked in dark blue would be the areas to focus on, where those in green, really replacing the lights in their existing location is going to be fine. There are some that actually are spaced closer than required. We may not be suggesting you remove lights, but you may end up, if they're spaced closer than required, you may end up being able to reduce the overall lumen output in some of those areas and still meet criteria. So from overlaying this first overlay was really with the collision data and identifying those intersections that lighting would play the biggest role in improving safety. Then our next layer is overlaying the intersections near schools that weren't meeting the criterion recommendations according to the guidelines. Then we look at intersections that follow the priority sidewalks and the bikeways that are also not meeting the current or the proposed, I would say, proposed guidelines. Uh, And then we have like more linear, like what streets to focus on. So those are all intersection lighting. Then we look at like what streets are near schools that are not meeting the guidelines. The bikeways and priority sidewalks, that the spacing is too far currently to meet guidelines. So you'll see there are some gaps in here that have spacing that does meet that criteria. And then we look at areas that have either light trespass existing or could have a change in luminary, either they're out of date, difficult to maintain, or adding shielding to control light trespass. And finally, comprehensive streetscape improvements along Solano that is identified as a future streetscape project, which would be the right time to look at the entire design. I guess that covers it. That comes to the conclusion of the recommendations of where we're headed with our street lighting improvements.
Thank you for the presentation. Is that the end of the staff presentation, or are there?
I believe so.
Would you like me to keep these slides up for questions?
Yes. Is this going to be a long follow-up or a short follow-up?
No, I was just basically going to reiterate the recommendation in the agenda.
Okay, why don't you do that, and then we can have our question period.
So our recommendation is the commission recommend that we incorporate the guidelines, kind of the examples shown here and what is in the second report, the guidelines and features report, as well as the near-term lighting priority recommendations into the street lighting evaluation to be presented to City Council. And recommendation that the City Council approve the street lighting guidelines and near-term priority recommendations.
Okay, thanks. So let's go ahead with questions from commissioners. Anybody like to start? Go ahead.
I have a question. So I understand that around, first, thanks a lot for all the information. And my question is, I understand that lighting needs to be improved around schools. That's because that's heavily used. And then in general, regarding like population density in Albany, we have higher density zoned in the northern area and northwest area. I don't see much improvement for area there are, like apartments. Is there a reason for that? For example, I'm looking at Brighton Avenue, where a lot of apartments sit, and then they have fewer improvements than the, let's say, Portland Avenue, where every intersection has improvement suggestion over there. Is there a specific reason for that? Portland Avenue is the one, well, the third one, yeah.
Right, so we've been, looking at, let me back up to here and see where you're, it is a little bit small. I don't know how well PowerPoint zooms.
Oh, we can see it. The small.
Well, I can zoom in a little bit,
awesome.
But if you can help guide me to where you're talking about.
So you see that big park, the big patch of green on your right-hand side. On the south part, that's Portland Avenue. No, on the right-hand side.
Oh, this
yeah.
one.
And then on the bottom along that park, that's Portland Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you suggested a lot of improvement along that avenue, based on.
So it was,
go ahead.
Right. So a lot of that was based on the priority sidewalk and bikeway map, and then looking at where these areas along those priority sidewalks is low. So up in here, I believe I'd have to go back to the map to see whether it's,
Yeah, basically Brighton Avenue is,
Talbot.
yeah, that's Talbot.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, east and west, that's
Brighton
Brighton, yeah.
yeah, so along Brighton Avenue, the current streetlight spacing is close enough to each other that replacing those streetlights with the lights that we've recommended will improve the lighting to meet criteria. Along these streets running more north-south, they are spaced too far apart. So that's that. I zoomed in a little too far. Zoomed out. Okay, so if we go back to the full map here, there are improvements here along Talbot that go all the way up through Brighton, and there are 2 intersections here that are identified on Brighton as not meeting that criteria.
Right, and actually, you know, at the very beginning of this meeting, people are calling in saying there's a intersection of Brighton and Cornell where they're requesting a stop sign. Well, that's where they see a lot of issue with speeding and collision.
I think all the complaints there about daylight stuff, the lighting on Brighton is adequate.
Okay.
I mean, I think Portland is mostly just for walkers and for to match the priority plan that they were talking about.
Yeah, I think more for like comments, right? I mean, when you overlap where your improvements are and where the densities of the housing of Albany's are, I didn't see that pattern. I think it's a general comment, not the questioning.
Okay, right. So we do. I may not have that in this particular presentation, but our reports and recommendations do have the high and medium density residential has a different level of criteria. So it has a higher light level requirement, which has been applied in this spacing criteria and everything else that we've been looking at. So the light that is recommended for Brighton may be a higher lumen output than other streets.
I see.
Do you have any more questions? Yeah, next person. Ken?
Thanks. Yeah, and thank you for the continuing onslaught of information. This has been good. I'm curious to know about where the tree interference was measured. Was that measured from the roadway or observed from the roadway?
It was observed from street level. So I don't know if I could quickly find that, but it basically photographs. There's a photograph of every street light within the data, the GIS data, and those they're actually even graded as sort of minor to major. You know, there are some lights where they're completely enveloped in the tree canopy, and you could almost barely tell there's a street light there. That's a major conflict that might require moving the pole rather than trimming, because it would where some of the more minor ones, trimming would be a more effective solution.
Sure. I'll follow up in an opinion comment later. Thanks. That answers my question. When you talk about dimming lights overnight, do they come back up early in the morning for commuters, or what's the usual practice?
So, you know, we've talked about this with the dimming is not going to be an immediate solution. There is no dimming system that Alameda County, who maintains your lighting system, They don't have currently a controlled dimming system.
Okay, that's enough
Each
said.
of, yeah.
Thank you. Just in interest of time, it looks like some poles need to be added on streets where there is an even number of poles currently. How would you add in another light fixture to a set of light fixtures that exist in order to get enhanced light and in a regular pattern?
So most of your lights are on existing overhead utility poles. They're not on every utility pole. So there are many more opportunities to add a light between existing lights.
Within blocks?
Within blocks, yeah.
Great.
In fact, most of them at least skip one utility pole. So you could double, without adding any more poles, you could double the number of lights down most of your streets.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commissioners? Okay, do we have any public comment?
I am not seeing any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, let's fire away with our commission discussion. We have a recommendation from staff for 2 points that we could put into a motion, but before we do that, let's hear what people think. Want to start?
I don't have really much comment to add other than say this is, really great, extensive information, a lot of factors considered. So I appreciate that effort by staff and the consultant on this. It really seems like it's well thought out. And so that's really the main comment that I've got.
I'll echo that. I'm sure several of us would like to echo that comment, but anyone on this side want to speak?
No, it's just been fascinating to see all the factors that get considered, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of these extremely dim lights starting to be replaced in the near future. It's pretty exciting.
I just have a question. Could you go back to your map, please?
Sure.
And this is an example because it's the only one I'm intimate with because it's on my street. I'm sorry, can you go to the far northeast corner of Albany?
Here?
Right there, that one in the middle of the block. That.
This one here.
Yeah, there's a street light there that's completely obscured by a humongous Italian stone pine, which would look great in the field in Tuscany, but doesn't really belong on my street anymore. So walk me through what would happen in an example like that.
So is this on a utility pole? The street light?
Yes.
It's in this map here.
I believe so.
Okay. So I guess there's a couple options there. Is that there's likely another utility pole here and another one here. They may or may not be also in conflict with the tree, but that would probably be the easiest thing, is to take this light, or put a new one on the, just move one over here and another one to the south.
And then the last question, how much detail has either you or the staff engaged with the city arborist?
We haven't, and this is sort of the study to identify the issues and give the city and staff the tool set to be able to start to make these, to be able to carve out projects. So once a project is identified, then that kind of conversation could occur. Before any tree trimming happened, certainly the arborist would be, and the forester. You probably have a city forester as well.
Well, yeah, our urban forester, I think that's the nomenclature for us. Okay, that's fine, thank you. I don't want to belabor the point.
So we have a staff recommendation for, oh, did you have more comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the light interference. Actually, have had some experiences on Marin, and last night had an experience on Washington between Keynes and Masonic. And let me preface this by saying I think my priority for this for lighting would be in intersections primarily. But if you can't see where you're putting your foot on the sidewalk, it's probably too dark. And there's, on the south side of Washington between Keynes and Masonic, there are at least a couple blocks that are heavily, well, I guess you'd say bushed instead of forested. I needed to get out my phone just to be able to see where I was putting my feet. So I just wanted noted that the tree interference was measured for roadways and not for sidewalks. And it might be something we want to take into consideration going forward.
You know, I guess the interference is you know, how close is the light within the tree canopy that it could create shadowing?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's toward the sidewalk or toward the street would have been captured in that. There are some, you know, street light, particularly along Marin, right? You have some very large trees, a very, very lush tree canopy, and streetlight scale just inherently, when the canopies start to come together, there's the streetlights. There will be shadowing on the sidewalks. Particularly for Marin, especially with this being an arterial and a bike lane and schools and I mean and these weird intersections that are at skewed angles and they're really big. We're recommending eventually, like the line that, oh sorry, I ended up messing up the screen, but it would be recommending eventually to have continuous pedestrian lighting as well as the street lighting to be able to light sidewalks as well as the street and improve the light within that bike lane.
So we heard at the workshop that the cost for putting in additional light poles and undergrounding wires is exponentially higher than adding lights to existing telephone poles.
Correct.
So we can assume that would be very expensive.
It'll be part of the cost analysis, and that the cost of that strategy would you'd be able to identify and see how does that fit, where does it fit, does the, you know, do you need collision data to support it, or really it's just it doesn't feel good. So identifying the right project and other improvements, if there are, that would help absorb that. You know, this is just identifying those strategies and giving some guidance. It does not set out a specific timeline. Okay. That's for future determination, utilizing this plan, or I should say this evaluation. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Am I still sharing my screen?
No.
No, I was just looking at it myself. Sorry about that.
Any other comments or points of discussion? So is there anything besides what's noted in the staff recommendation that folks would like to incorporate into a motion? Sometimes what we do is just move the staff recommendation and that kind of gets it done with a minimum of wordsmithing, but are there any other points that anybody would like to make that fall outside of what's written in the staff recommendation? Take that as a no.
Well, I would say that it's hard to weigh the recommendations based on not knowing the costs associated with them.
I was having the same question, like how do we recommend without cost? But it seems like this is like the very first step, and then
It's very broad.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like what we're if we go with the staff recommendation, what we're saying is we want this document and the ideas in it to be taken as our plan, not to say that we're going to do anything in particular.
Right, that this isn't a project per se. This is the precursor to the project. This is what do we want to do, then we have to figure out, how we're going to fund the next step based on these priorities. And maybe this is going a little too far, but similar to the sidewalk treatments that we said, here's our sidewalk treatment priorities, let's identify funding, and then we're going to systematically use the funding in concert with those priorities.
Yeah, it's like a shopping list without the price on it.
Well, there is a
So
slide
the,
with...
the price will be included in the evaluation. So that will be information available when it's, to city council, and when this gets adopted, it's not like you said, it's not identifying the specific project yet, but you could then utilize this to carve out those projects.
Maybe you could switch to your slide number 27, I think it is, which has the near, mid, and long-term recommendations.
Sure. You keep very good notes. 26.
There we go.
Or let's see.
No,
where
it's
no.
is it 30?
There we go. So I'm comfortable with the near term. I think it gets a little more fuzzy for me, midterm and long term.
And I guess the midterm, let me take a look at the streetscape projects. So this continuous lighting along arterial bike lanes, that one is pretty much related to, well, I guess it's Marin and Masonic that would require more of the undergrounding and things like that. So most of the midterm is pretty much, there are safety improvements at intersections that will require new poles, because there may not be a utility pole in the right location for it to add another light at an intersection. Now, that may be determined that adding another wood utility pole with an overhead feed is the most cost-effective way of doing that, rather than underground feed with a foundation. Those things would be part of the design and other decisions to look at these in individual sense.
So I just reread the staff recommendations, and number 2 includes near-term priority recommendations. So I'm comfortable with that.
I can speak to a little bit more about how we would go to midterm and long-term. So midterm and long-term, I think that gives a sense of a timeline, but realistically what it is these are things that we can work out through the CIP process. And, talking about funding as well, there are certain projects we may be able to accommodate things or bring in some of the lighting earlier because we had another project planned, which is large enough that we can find funding, or alternatively, it's large enough that maybe we can even find grant funding. Some of the midterm improvements might be related similarly, where we have a small project already in that neighborhood that we can do something with, or we take that and make it into a medium-sized project where we take care of neighborhoods and go around the city. There's lots of different options for how we deliver the medium, mid, and long term, and it really comes down to kind of funding resources, both staff and funding resources, and kind of what we work out on the project side of what it is that we want there. We have guidelines that help us have the same kind of basis in conversation, but we would be coming back to you and to council to really work those out.
So it's not set in stone that a particular midterm project would happen before a particular long-term project?
No, if we find opportunities to take care of things sooner, we would. If, Solano is the right place to take care of Solano lighting, for example, seems to fit really well, we would then want to take care of it there.
I'm pretty happy with that. I think that I'm happy to move the staff recommendation, and I don't need it to be part of the recommendation, but just kind of planting the seed of thought that when it gets time to design the projects, and we're looking at places where we might need a new pole, if the tree canopy is not problematic, we could consider solar-powered poles. That way we don't have to worry about the undergrounding, and it reduces our utility costs significantly. Just, like I say, a thought for when it gets to the project phase. So, I don't know, Ken, you've
Just one consideration with that too, to say, do everything in communication with Alameda County. Since they maintain your lighting system now, do they offer solar options when they're a power company? I don't know if that's true, but what's the, I guess it's PG&E that's your power company. So Albany, will they maintain solar as well, or does that then fall to the city to maintain it?
Good point. Well, subject to further thought and discussion.
Yeah, it is becoming much more viable where there is solar access for solar lighting, and it does save costs.
I think that's a great point. And for a smaller issue like maybe Michael Street, where you don't want to redo the whole thing, but you need a solution quickly, that could be a good option, or potentially, with all of what was said in mind.
So we have.
So I'm happy to move the staff recommendation.
Seconded.
Okay, let's take a roll call.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Javindal?
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Peng?
Yes.
Commissioner Vahil McClanahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Von Neidingen?
Aye.
Chair Chomsky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any further comments about this agenda item? Okay, thanks. Let's move on to item 5-2, the commission status report.
Thank you, Chair Chomsky. I don't have a slide presentation, but I can bring the report onto the screen. So this is at the request of City Administration to provide status update reports from each of the committees and commissions to City Council, with the intention that these would be presented in January to Council. And I've highlighted some notes that would be either incorporated or removed, but provided some of the guidance that was communicated to staff and Commission Chair. So it identifies purpose of the commission, attendance, items worked on during the calendar year, and then asked for a few bullets optionally to indicate prospective upcoming work. And so it works through all of the work we've done this year, and identifies what's completed, what's in progress. And in terms of prospective upcoming work, we've included the active transportation plan update, the traffic calming program, and there are 2 strategic plan items, the council strategic plan items that really fall within the purview of the Transportation Commission that are included here as well that have been requested to be worked on through the strategic plan. So those are the consider conducting citywide street traffic surveys to obtain objective data regarding prioritizing traffic calming and exploring opportunities for shuttle service to connect community to business areas. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Any questions from the commission? Any public comment?
If anyone online would like to address the commission, please use your raise the hand function at the bottom of Zoom screen. I am not seeing any raised hands.
Okay. Well, thanks for putting this together. This is, just to clarify, this is in lieu of a work plan. In past years, we would have had a work plan near the beginning of our term, and that would have kind of set the framework for what we were supposed to do in our meetings, and now instead we do whatever we do, and then we at the end of our year, we write down what it is we've done.
So this is, my understanding is this is an effort to more streamline the process, to focus it on reporting out, giving update on the work that's been done, and keeping it relatively short and sweet on the upcoming actions, and tying it directly to the strategic plan that the council has approved. So that's the indication. And yes, this is sort of the first round of us trying this, but in lieu of a work planning process that previously.
So in the previous format, the items worked on would have been short, and the prospective upcoming items would have been long. And in this format, the items worked on is long, and the prospective upcoming items is short. Is that kind of the qualitative difference between a work plan and this?
My only thought is that as I look at how many are in progress, those carry forward. So I kind of feel like the upcoming items are just add to what's currently in progress. So it actually looks like a pretty robust work plan for the coming year. And as capital projects come up, we do review those. So I feel like we got. Yeah, no need to find things to add. That's my feeling.
Although I do have a question about something upcoming. They're going to break ground on the housing around the El Cerrito Plaza BART. Is it late next year or early 2025? Are there going to be impacts to our, that's going to add a whole lot of new people? If there's some expectation of how that's going to change traffic patterns in the area, and is there anything that Albany needs to do to respond to that, or is it considered to be an El Cerrito issue?
I will comment that when the housing was on El Cerrito Plaza, when it's coming out through the streets that connect to Brighton, that was a big deal for us. Once you get to the other side at the BART station, I don't think the traffic's going to cut through the plaza so much. So other than key route San Pablo, I don't know that we would expect much.
There is some active transportation planning work that El Cerrito is doing in conjunction with that project. I think that's focused mostly on east-west and some improvements to the north-south versus new connections that would affect our network. But that's the piece of planning that I'm aware of that they're.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I can really think of is like maybe some of the, I guess another Brighton specific thing would be a better, like the flashing signals that you get with the sensors on the bike path when you add several thousand people right there on that bike path, they're probably going to increase daily traffic a lot. But I don't know, and maybe in the future. So,
quick question: these projects around the plaza have the builders pulled permits for these?
This is the BART station, not within the plaza.
So okay, so-
No, my understanding is it's still in planning. I don't think they're at building permit stage.
Interesting point. I actually expect that what we'll experience more is people from Albany complaining about a perceived and/or real issue of going to the BART station. And it makes our opportunities for shuttle service item stand out to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunities for shuttle service to the BART station for Albanians to get to reduce especially to reduce car trips for some of these neighborhoods that are underserved by AC Transit.
I'm interested in whether we fall under any of the other criteria or council strategic plans. I mean, increasing mode shift away from carbon vehicles seems to fall under the climate action and adaptation goals and could be addressed by providing facilities through the ATP. So I think we could up our number of plans that we affect, show more action.
Is the comment to just reference the other strategic plan goal as well for that one? Okay.
More credit for what we've got on there.
Thank you. That's much better worded. Appreciate it.
Any other suggestions? Fine-tune this document before we submit it. So the only change that's been proposed is to add that additional strategic plan goal in the final section. Okay, and of course the yellow highlights, so the December meeting highlight will be changed to reflect this meeting. The other yellow parts are just instructions that will be removed from the final document.
If I can make a motion?
Go ahead.
I move that we authorize the staff and chair to modify as agreed and submit to the council.
Second that.
Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Javindal?
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Peng?
Yes.
Commissioner Vihil McClanahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Von Neidingen?
Aye.
Chair Chomsky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And we are halfway through our items and we're at exactly 8:30, so it's looking good for an on-time conclusion tonight, but you never know what's going to happen with
Count your horses.
Let's move on to item 5-3, Active Transportation Plan Update Request for Proposals.
Thank you, Chair. So, so this item was recently presented to City Council for feedback following the last Transportation Commission discussion on this item, which was a year ago now, last December. And so we're bringing it back with a draft RFP and recommendation to select a commissioner to participate in selection process for a consultant. So some context for anyone watching or new commissioners that weren't involved last December. There's a lot of elements informing our context for preparing an ATP, including
as we just discussed, council's strategic plan calling for it, the climate action and adaptation plans, ambitious mode shift and carbon reduction goals, social equity and inclusivity work, Solano Avenue Complete Streets study, and the actions from council following that study calling for additional analysis, the Marin Avenue paving project that called for a look at complete streets, review of options for additional facilities along Marin, and of course, funding. The current ATP was adopted in 2012 and has been amended in 2014 and 2019. It's a large document with a series of goals, policies, actions, and projects. Typical scope of work for an active transportation plan is to summarize the current context, existing plans and conditions, develop goals and objectives for the future, collect data on trip volumes, collisions, barriers, gaps, to document information gained from public engagement to inform the desired network, preparation of bicycle and pedestrian network diagrams, and development of projects. And we discussed previously and with council sort of the level of detail that could go into projects, ranging from more of a toolkit of design elements and approaches to specific project concept plans, identifying areas for future studies or some combination of those. Also identifying social justice and equity considerations for the plan, and looking at least conceptual level of costs to inform prioritization. So last December's commission comments included simplifying the document and making key elements of it accessible on the website, that the network maps are a key piece of this, support inclusive designs for a variety of users of the networks, integration with other modes of transportation. There was a mix of opinion on the project level of detail that should be included, and a discussion of focusing on keeping a viable pipeline of projects for funding, and that prioritization of projects important, including an equity evaluation. At last month's City Council discussion, we received comments including looking beyond collision data for the safety considerations in the analysis, also look at demographic and travel visitor data, look to expand input and engagement opportunities in the planning process, consider opportunities for temporary installations to gather data and feedback. Some interest including education on terminology and design constraints, to study parking reorganization potential along Solano Avenue to better understand the options and impacts on Solano, to go into enough level of design to ensure feasibility of a facility recommended on a particular route in terms of that level of detail for projects, and that high priority projects should include enough detail to facilitate seeking grants. And with that, we provided, attached to the report, the draft RFP, and we're seeking the commission to select a representative to participate in our selecting a consultant for this work. And if there are comments on the draft RFP, we'll welcome those as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions from the commission? Do you have a question? No. I guess one question I have is the presentation you just showed. I don't think I found that in the attachments. Is that PowerPoint on the website?
No.
I think all the information in it was in the other documents that you uploaded, but it was very conveniently organized in that PowerPoint. Are you able to?
I'm happy to load it. It was,
afterwards, that would be
information was pulled from
the memo primarily, but
Yeah.
it's easier to communicate in the slides. I'm
Easier
happy
to
to
see in the
deliver that.
slide because of all the
Sure.
related bullet points. And one question I had was about look beyond collision data. Do you have more specifics about what that means? Like how else do you evaluate safety besides looking at collision data? Are there specific ideas for that, or is that up to the applicants to kind of use their imagination to figure out how they're going to do that?
Yeah, several things. One was there was some discussion on travel data and trying to utilize information from like cell phone data or other sources that can inform at least travel behavior as part of it. Some of that was specific to the discussion around Solano Avenue and parking and sort of catchment and how much mode shift can be anticipated. Another area that we do have some information, we just did the local roadway safety plan. We did collect a lot of feedback on perceptions of safety and comments that people had at particular locations. The third was brought up at the council level was a tool that allows folks to catalog near miss data, and so we've talked to the company that's providing that. I don't know, whether we'll be able to collect that or how yet, but that was the specific suggestion in the discussion.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions about this? Any public comment about this item?
If members of the public would like to address the commission, please use the raise your hand function. And at the moment, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, let's open up the commission discussion then. Go ahead.
I'm very interested to see that the council actually recommend we use temporary approach. I think that hopefully that can get some result faster, and also regarding looking beyond the data, talking about perception. I'm not sure if we keep a good record of all the email from the residents. I know maybe we shouldn't just pay attention to the loudest voice, but I think that's part of the perception, right? Through I think I have stayed here for almost 2 years now. I think there are certain geographic locations that always get complained, so maybe those can be reflected in our ATP. Just a comment.
So as we discuss this, I think what we're being asked to do primarily here is two things: to select a representative, but also to approve the document, the RFP document, which we all had in our materials, but which hasn't been up on the screen. So as we make our comments, let's think about whether we're asking for something to be reflected in a change in that RFP document, or if it's just a general comment that we're putting out there for everybody to hear, just for our own discussion purposes. So did you have anything in mind to add or change in the RFP regarding that? Or, okay. Any other thoughts? Ken?
Yeah, thanks for this very clear and concise document. I'd like to mess it up a little bit and add more information, if that's okay, but proposing. So on page 2, under other planning efforts to reference, would love to include the lighting study and the climate action and adaptation plan, which I think both directly apply.
The CAP is listed there, but the lighting study is...
This dyslexia just keeps getting me.
Have it,
Did I cut it off?
Second item from the bottom.
Second item, I see it's there, thank you. I don't read as well as other people. Anyway, got that, so lighting would be great. Under data collection, I think it's important to note that the methodology of the LRSP was not only an issue because of the limitation of the time of the data, but of reporting and the shoehorning of things like data, assuming they were intersections when, so there were a lot of details there that I think need to be overcome. And under data collection, I'm very interested in the potential for the near miss collection that I heard described, and would love to participate in that.
So would you like to suggest adding that to the RFP document?
I would propose that we add that to the RFP document. And I was at the city council meeting where that was proposed. If others have questions, I'd be happy to answer that. Because I looked up the website and yeah. And then under social equity and inclusivity, why did I write that note? It doesn't belong there, but there isn't anything in this document about addressing the climate action and adaptation goal of switching mode from carbon producing or oil burning vehicles to other types of vehicles. I'm not sure where that goes. Under partner educational institutions, I believe there are 2 private high schools, St. Mary's and Tilden. Tilden's a middle and high school. Sorry, that makes it more convoluted. That's all I had.
I guess my only comment really is kind of one that we've already touched on, the other than collision data. I suppose part of what we're hoping to get to is what's the latent demand, the people who say, I would do this, but I don't feel safe. And whether that's through perceptions or some other data collection format, we could try to estimate it. You know, other ways that we could estimate would be looking at sort of what's the traffic volume, what's the exposure that creates just a general model of risk. But the more I think about it, I don't want to define how the consultant does it. I just want to tell them, we want to explore this. Bring us your good ideas, how you think you can do it. And I'd be perfectly happy with that. So,
where it says community safety concerns, is that a broad enough category to cover everything?
I think so. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting to is I think we've covered the key bases of what we want and some of the details of how I'm okay with letting them work out. If we overly constrain it, we may find that we're not getting to what we want in the end, or that we're just building up excess work that's going to cost us more. But again, the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty comfortable with it as is. I think with the stuff that Ken's added, that's fine. I know, Ken, you've got a pretty good sense of the details, so if you want to be on the selection committee, I would totally support you doing that.
Somebody objects. Not ready to get verbal about that, are you? Okay, that's fine. I can handle the criticism. Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you. Something you said triggered in me something that I hadn't addressed, which was under essential outcomes, number 2. It's specific to level of comfort and ability at different locations. And this is our one chance to go beyond the specific project and talk about routes. And a route is only as good as the least comfortable location. Unless you identify some of those routes, you can't really qualify that. So I'm sorry I don't have a verbiage for you, but does what I'm saying make sense? I got one nod. Okay, thank you.
If I could throw something in there, I guess, are you looking for travel demand patterns or something along those lines? And
Let me take a moment, because this came up in listening to, for example, Carrie Hobbs-Schulman talking about getting her kid, and personal conversations about getting her kid from her location near the middle school to Ocean View. And it turned out that there was one really comfortable way that was really long. There are other ways that are shorter, but she's not comfortable sending her child. And I really started thinking about it. We live on a grid, and when you're driving an automobile, you have a lot of choices. And if you're sending your kid walking to school, there are a lot of sidewalks. But if you're sending them to school biking, and you only have one good route, what do you tell your kid when the street's closed? They should come home? It's really more about a matrix of routes. And maybe there's the route you prefer to take, but you got to have at least one backup.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our routes are constrained by the fact that Solano has very few guaranteed safe crossings, and San Pablo is just frankly a nightmare.
Exactly.
And then everything on the the west side of San Pablo is, height constrained. Kids cannot handle some of those slopes. They won't. They'll go a less safe route to avoid a really steep hill. Adults kind of seek those things out sometimes if they're of a certain character, but it's not when you're doing it for transport, right? Like you don't want to get all sweaty on your way to work or on your way to school. So, like her particular routes are tough because you got to cross all of those major elements, and there's not not a lot of great routes, right? I'm assuming she was saying she would send her kid all the way along the bike path to Dartmouth and then down and then across through
on the days when her child gets up early. Yes.
So yeah, it's difficult without being able to change some of the facts on the ground, which we kind of can't.
I guess I'm just starting to think about the maps we produced as part of the last ATP, and they were focused on a very loose spread network of routes that were improved. And we also thought about, stop me if I go on too long, but we also thought about how to improve things, and we thought about things like on Masonic, where you have the Greenway and you have Masonic. Well, great, the fast people can go on Masonic, and the slow people can go on the Greenway. It turns out not everybody chooses to do so. So we might have to make that a little more explicit. All these details. Anyway, we need to think about more routes closer together, closer to the places people want to go to and from. And it's routes that are hard to get to and vitally important.
I would say the more I'm listening to this, the more I think we need an explicit map of low-stress routes, independent of the overall map, that just the low stress, because for some people, that's all there is.
And that's what's going to get us the people who are hesitant to get on bikes now and hesitant to send their kids out on the streets.
But these are all great ideas, and I'm still trying to figure out how they affect the wording of the RFP document, if at all. So I think we're focused on a series of bicycle and pedestrian network diagrams specifying types of facilities or level of comfort and ability at different locations. And you've already suggested that instead of just locations, you want to refer to routes. Is there anything more beyond that that we can do to
I hate to
improve
throw
that?
one more complication in here, but I wonder to what extent we want to bring the schools into the equation, because, for example, I don't think it's too common, I could be wrong, but I think there's not a lot of elementary school age kids who have to cross San Pablo, because most of the kids who go to Ocean View are in the neighborhood. So I wonder if the school districts could give us some examples or just some estimates of who goes to what schools, so there's a better sense for what the traffic patterns might be.
I mean, there've been repeated complaints from Ocean View parents of incredibly long lines of cars trying to get in.
Into what?
Into Ocean View.
At drop-off time.
At drop-off and at pickup. So, I mean, and it's all been made worse by the construction, but these complaints pre-existed the construction period. And I think a lot of that is because people are coming from farther away. A lot of people come from up on the hill rather than just being in the neighborhood. So, I mean, there was a lot of shuffling recently because of the capacity reduction with Marin, which was down to, I want to say, about 50% of its capacity at the middle of last year, I think. So a lot of students were shunted to Cornell or Ocean View who normally would be at Marin. And that may be receding now that it's back open and at full capacity.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, when I moved from University Village to my house, I moved all the way across town, but for the last year of my son's time in Ocean View, I schlepped him and was one down back to Ocean View. I was one of those parents who I'd pull up on Jackson at the main crosswalk, and then he'd jump out of the car. Yeah, that can be a problem. So the question is, though, I want to ask a more global question, which is, how do we bring into this discussion of the RFP any information or contacts we need to make with the school district?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if it like belongs as a specific item, but it would be really nice to have some sort of consultant input on how to reduce car miles involved in getting kids to school. You know, like the middle school and the high school both draw enormous traffic jams every day. A lot of we've been seeing, like at Cornell, where one of my kids is, we've been seeing a lot of a moderate improvement. There's been discussions of various things, but it'd be interesting to see if we could get some funding or some assistance to understand why people are driving and how we could make it better for them. And I think the school district would be on board with that.
Commissioner Barnes, if I may, I think the question you're posing would be a great one to pose to the consultants in an interview. To see how they would approach that methodologically.
We have expanded our commission recently with an eye towards involving the school district more. Yes. But it's a great question to keep asking.
So I'm going to ask again, is there anything that folks on the commission would like to change or add to the RFP document to express some of what we've been talking about for the last few minutes? Or is this just ideas to keep in mind as we move forward in the process?
Probably ideas to keep in mind. I wouldn't know how to insert that particular concern in a way that that doesn't give it undue weight.
Well, I'm looking at page 4, partner educational institutions. It addresses the breadth, and I commented on that before, but it doesn't really address the engagement specifically.
I mean, we could note that we do have some interest in reducing car trips to elementary schools and would welcome input or having some, having that be fleshed out as part of the proposal.
I'm not sure we need to get that specific in this. What if we said something like, we're interested in strategies for engaging with the school communities?
Under public engagement, it mentions presentations. Well, it mentions presentations to school district classroom and parent outreach. It doesn't really talk about connecting with the school district at a high level, like working with school district staff to talk about our shared goals and what we can do to move toward them.
Yeah, I mean, you could just add a sentence to the data collection portion to say, like, of particular interest is, trips to school. Because there's a lot of, I feel like it's a particularly high leverage point where you can, people are pretty amenable to mode shift. Kids like to be able to go to school on their own when they're older.
This is usually the point in the meeting where one of the staff members says, I think we know what to do here. We can stop.
Yes.
So do you want more,
we're
more
not looking
wordsmithing and guidance from us on this?
We're not seeking a motion on the RFP. We just requested comments to staff, so we've heard those comments.
Okay. So is this specific enough for you? Okay.
We just need a motion to select a representative, participate on the selection committee.
Yes.
Can I make a comment about that? We've recently expanded our number of commissioners, and it can be a little lonely being the only commissioner. Seconded, do we want to open that up to two? Would that be acceptable to staff?
Sure. I mean, there will be others that will want to be represented. We don't want too large of a committee just because then it gets kind of clunky to have a conversation, but I'm sure we can accommodate one more commissioner.
So who else will be on the selection committee besides this representative?
I imagine that we would have several staff members. We might want to bring in someone from the school district or someone from from a transportation agency. There's a wide range of possibilities. We have gone that far to build out the interview panel.
I guess my question was whether we should look to Evan to represent the commission from a school district perspective, or whether there will already be school district represented on that selection committee from a different angle.
I think overlap is okay.
Well, my question, Ken, you're the obvious candidate for this.
I'm certainly interested.
We were going to consider a second person. Do folks have someone in mind that?
I was wondering if.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it if there's desire for a second person. But
any interest further down? It's okay to say no.
I would need to know how much of a time commitment it is, because I'm currently doing a lot of college applications.
So the timing is an issue, I understand, yeah.
We could try it, and if it turns out there's 3 people there representing the school district, people could drop out. It's not like.
Can you move closer to the mic?
For the whole time. Oh, I'm sorry. It could be flexible. People could, feel it out in the first meeting or two and decide whether or not they want to continue to participate. I don't think it's going to be set in stone.
Having 2 commissioners would also make it easier to schedule if we could assume that both don't have to be at every meeting, but get exposed to the materials.
I'd just add that generally
is a time commitment on reviewing submittals. Usually there's a written submittal that gets reviewed, but isn't at a particular time, so you have some flexibility when you do that within your, week. And then generally there's a subset of applicants, if we get a lot of them, that are called in to make a presentation to the panel. So there's generally a two-part commitment to that, some reading and review, and then discussion amongst the group and inviting folks to receive presentation.
Yeah, I got a thumbs up.
No, I'm fine with any of that. So if you think it would be useful, I'm happy to contribute.
I'll move that we select Ken and Evan as the representatives to the selection committee.
Second?
A roll call, please.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Javanda?
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey?
Aye.
Commissioner Peng?
Yes.
Commissioner Vihil McClanahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Von Nightingale?
Aye.
Chair Chomsky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any further comments about this agenda item? Or anything else that staff would like from us on this?
No.
You got it? Okay. All right, we're actually going to do item 5-4. We've had this vehicle injury collision data on our agenda for months now, and it's always been pushed off the end by other time-consuming things. So I'm really glad we're getting to it tonight.
And here I shortened it to make sure we got through it. Well, thank you.
I mean, I think part of our approach tonight was that staff had prepared this as a substantial agenda item that we would spend a lot of time on, and we obviously weren't getting to it that way. So staff has prepared a shorter version of it for us to cover tonight, but with also the idea that if we wanted to dig into it more and have a longer presentation in the future, we could. Is that?
Yes, so the previous few months' presentation or materials, this is a slide version of it that was shared, and I'll run through. And as Chair Chomsky mentioned, we'll seek some direction from the Commission on interest level for diving into more details on these. So for those folks that haven't received one of these presentations before, the data source is the UC Berkeley's Safe Transportation Research and Education Center Transportation Injury Mapping System, sometimes referred to as the acronym TIMS, as down there at the bottom, and is available to the public. It collects and maps statewide integrated traffic record system SWITR's data collected and maintained by the California Highway Patrol. Injury collisions within the city of Albany reported by Albany Police Department or California Highway Patrol are included in this database. The years 2011 through 2022 are represented in what I'm presenting, with the caveat that data from 2021 and 2022 in here is still provisional and subject to change. So this maps injury collisions change from 2013. Changes in injury collisions at the state and county level have pretty closely tracked. 2020 saw a significant decline due to reduced vehicle trips during the pandemic restrictions and have returned to collision numbers from 2013, but are still significantly lower than 2016 through 2019. Albany is a smaller sample size with more variation year to year, but collision numbers have overall followed the similar trend. Serious and fatal collisions, however, saw a small reduction in 2020, but have subsequently continued an upward trend at the state level and approached previous peaks at the county level. Albany, with single-digit number sample sizes, shows significant variation again, but overall mirrors the upward trend. State and national analysis identifies increased walking and cycling activity, larger vehicles causing more severe injuries, and turning collisions being more likely with larger vehicles as contributing factors towards this trend. state and national analysis also identifies, oh, sorry, I already mentioned that. So those can be presumed to be factors affecting us as well. Severe and fatal collisions from 2011 through 2022 are shown here over time, and this and the remaining analysis is excluding freeway collisions. The previous slide showing comparisons with county and state data included freeway collisions. And here is bicycle and pedestrian involved collisions. Again, while small sample size in Albany displays wide variation year to year, there is somewhat of a bounce back in these types of collisions with increases in travel following the drop in 2020. Bike-involved collisions have to some extent bucked this trend in Albany, with 49 injury collisions in the first 5 years, 2011 to 2015, and 32 collisions in the most recent 5 years. That does include the 2020 numbers. The Buchanan Bikeway may take some credit for this, with 8 bike-involved collisions on Buchanan between 2011 and 2015, and 0 now between 2018 and 2022. Vision Zero methodology, and that utilized by the local roadway safety plan, focuses the most attention on severe and fatal collisions as those causing the most harm. And the most recent 5-year period shows an even greater share on San Pablo and Solano, with fewer at other locations, and again, none on Buchanan. In 2021 and 2022, there were 11 severe collisions. 7 were pedestrian involved and 1 cyclist involved. And 6 occurred on San Pablo Avenue, 3 on Solano Avenue, and 2 on Marin Avenue, consistent with the overall severe and fatal collisions largely occurring on these high-volume corridors. This shows the longer period and the more recent 5-year period by corridor for pedestrian-involved collisions. Relatively similar with San Pablo and Solano dominating. And bicycle-involved collisions by corridor, again with the reduction in the Buchanan collisions being the most visible trend. And so with that, I do have some more detail if you want to go into it, but wanted to make sure to at least get through the summary, and was just going to highlight, the focus of this commission and our active transportation work recently has been on some of those corridors, and we continue to see the need for that. The San Pablo Pedestrian Improvements Project that is moving, as well as the Alameda County Transportation Commission San Pablo Multimodal Corridor projects will involve some significant pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements along San Pablo. The Marin Avenue repaving, completion of phase 1 and continuation in the coming year into the next phase of that will have improvements for pedestrian crossings and wider right-of-way for cyclists. And with that, I'll open it up for question and comments. Again, we do within the data that we have access to through TIMS that's publicly accessible, can dive deeper into individual collisions and factors, looking by corridor if that level of detail analysis is something that the commission wants to go to. We can bring it back when there is a longer period of time on the agenda. We just haven't been finding that the last few months, and wanted to make sure to get through the big high-level numbers. Thank you.
So my question about the last thing you said, I think I asked you this before, but I don't remember the answer. If we come back to this agenda item at a future meeting, it'll be in 2024, and would we expect or want to then include 2023 data in the study, or is that something that would only happen at the end of 2024, or is that something that only happens every 2 years? Like, are we stuck with this kind of an end date of our data set being the end of 2022 for a little while?
We're stuck with this data set for a few more months. The provisional data for the previous year has been coming out, I think, in around April or May of the following year. So if it wasn't till April or May of next year, then we might have access to the 2023 data at that point.
Okay, so part of what we might have to choose tonight is whether we want to have another look at this data early in 2024 or wait till like the second quarter of 2024 and have a look at a data set that might by then include 2023.
And a part of the question I would pose is what level of data is useful? Is going through those reports sort of collision by collision for the bike and ped collisions or the severe and fatal, is that important information that you want us to make sure to get to? And yeah, if it happens before April, then it would be for these 2 years. If it happens after, it could dive into the next year.
And we've all seen the presentation that you put together for previous meetings this year that we didn't get to in the meeting. So, we haven't gone through it in detail, but I think folks hopefully have an idea of what kind of detail that presentation included and can start to judge whether we want to go through that while we're here at City Hall, or if we're happy just looking at that at home. But let's see if other folks have questions before we get into that discussion. Go ahead.
So it's encouraging that it looks like the data supports Buchanan as safer for cyclists than before. That's certainly gratifying for the work that we do. When we were doing the LRSP, we got used to looking at graphic representations of the locations of collisions. And without necessarily asking you to map the data, did you notice any significant differences between this data set and what we reviewed with the LRSP, or was that something that you looked at?
This is, the 2021 and 2022 data is a smaller slice, so it's just the couple of years worth of collisions. A number of there were a few that are issues that have been identified previously that are some that we're tackling with some of the projects I listed. So there were some, left turn conflicts with crosswalks in San Pablo, that kind of thing. The other main one that there were a couple of examples of in this round of data was some of our offset intersections that, in my mind, call attention to looking if there's additional sort of striping or in-street kind of delineation that could help make sure to improve those kind of vehicle maneuvers through those intersections. But those would be the two that jump to mind.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any public comment on this item?
If anyone would like to address the commission, please use the raise your hand function. At the moment, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. Well, let's come back to the commission for discussion.
I'll say I appreciate, as Ken mentioned, that you pointed out how the Buchanan improvements have shown a safety benefit. I think that's great. Looking at the streets with the severe and fatal collisions, San Pablo, Solano, Marin. Marin was at the bottom of the list, fewest number. And, since this started in 2011, which was 6 years after we, deployed the first version of the Marin bike lanes, I'm kind of hoping that that's part of why the numbers are low there. I just want to say I find it encouraging. It feels like the stuff we're doing is really helpful, because when I started on the commission before the bike lanes, Marin was the top safety priority citywide. And I feel like we have made big progress there. So, thanks to everyone here, to staff. It's really nice to see this. The other thought in terms of coming back to this at some point, I would say I'd love to see another year of post-pandemic data. So waiting until we've got the 2023 and then coming back. And the as presented was great, but I do think that at that point, having the conversation where we look at the primary collision factors will definitely be helpful to us to help prioritize where we want to put our energy.
So to go beyond just the numbers and to look at the actual locations and conditions.
Well, the locations and conditions, and this is one of those things where I love to see more data, and it's tempting to say, let's look at all the locations and conditions, but I also want to look at how statistically significant they are. I'm grateful that our numbers are so small, that it's not very statistically significant, but looking at the aggregated primary collision factors for similar facilities, I think would be useful to us to find out, is it speeding? Is it left turns, right turns? Where are we having the most failures? And thus, what types of treatments are likely to address those the best?
So dawn and dusk.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, that's, if it's lighting, then that's a significant part of it. I've looked at enough locations where time of day and the sun in somebody's eyes has been the issue. Mm-hmm. There's so many of these things. And so looking location by location or report by report can extract some of that, but I don't know that it's something we would do as a commission in a meeting. If there's takeaways from what staff has seen, that's great. I'd rather look at the bigger patterns.
Well, and it might dovetail with the ATP work. And I would also push out a bit, and we talked about this a lot during the last ATP process, but it's not just what's happening in Albany. People don't choose to have an accident in a community, right? They have an accident on their route. And if we're trying to provide good routes, then we need to be very cognizant of what's going on in a slightly larger bubble.
I think to some extent, having seen the Alameda County trends, along with the Albany trends, gets us partway there.
That helps.
Not super specifically, but in
That
general.
helps, but if there's a major issue on Marin or Solano, just outside of Albany,
right,
for example.
Any comments from this side of the room?
Just really happy to see some results coming out from that Marine, and then maybe our next goal is move to Solano, right? Because we can't do anything to San Pablo, so that's
I mean, there are plans and motions to make it better, but I don't know how much weight we can put on them because it's all Alameda County specific, right?
There's work that the commission has done that we're taking on a piece of that in this coming year, and we're working with Alameda County Transportation Commission to do other segments of San Pablo as part of their project, but both of those are moving.
I'd like to respond to your comment. It's interesting, the Alameda County Transportation Commission, ACTC, chose whether to do on San Pablo or parallel to San Pablo treatments from Oakland to Albany based on feedback they got from talking to different communities within those cities. The feedback they got from the city council at that time in Albany was that taking away traffic lanes on San Pablo was a non-starter. They might get a little more nuanced response now, more positive, but that's what they got then. They also got strong feedback from businesses on San Pablo and Albany against changing the configuration. So we focused on crossings primarily and parallel routes, but that could change.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to some of their planners at some of the, they've had a whole bunch of like bike community open house stuff in the past year or so. And I've talked to some of their planners, and they really do want some of the, like their eventual goal is to have some on-street facilities for most of San Pablo, but it's basically like as money comes along and as, community willingness evolves. Basically when people see like where the more adventurous cities, I guess, who have put these on-street facilities don't find that it's a disaster for their businesses, then it'll be easier to convince everybody else. But because they've rejected some input in the past where it's like, well, we don't want to put a big concrete barrier here because we really want a bike lane to go through here at some point, so we'd prefer like a concrete island rather than a contiguous barrier. So I don't really know where I'm going with that. Sorry.
We're veering a little away from our collision data.
Yeah. Well, we're getting into what can we, once we have the collision data, what can we use it to, like how can we use it to inform our work? But yeah, let's see if we can focus on the data that we've seen so far and the more detailed data that was in the presentations that we had to skip at previous meetings, and whether we want to come back and look at that exact data set early next year. It sounds like your feeling is wait till mid-year
Wait till we have
and
new data.
have the longer data set. Does anyone else have a thought about that?
As long as it can be used as part of the ATP process, I think waiting is a reasonable thing.
And just want to add 2 points. I mean, we can constantly have data, and this seems like to finally have some real substance result, right? I mean, look at you guys who contributed a lot of time to get this result on marine. I think we need to kind of reinforce this consensus, right? When you have the physical infrastructure there, this is the result. And I don't, you try to use it and repeat it again. Maybe that will help. I mean, this is.
So I'm not really hearing any suggestions that, oh, well, now that we've seen this presentation tonight, that informs what we're going to do next. It's more like that informs how we're going to look at the data again next year, which is fine, but does anyone have a reaction to the data we've already seen that says, oh, well, based on this, I think we should focus on X, Y, Z, or...
Based on this, we should focus on Solano. Do exactly what
actually,
we
you
did.
did say that. So
Yeah.
Good.
I agree with that, and that it's really kind of feeds into the ATP.
Is there anything else you were looking for out of this discussion?
Nope.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Just thanks for putting it together and being patient with us.
Thanks. Okay, I think we can finish by 9:30 without a motion to extend.
Yes.
Announcements?
I just have a quick reminder that AC Transit's still seeking comments on their service scenarios through December 13th, so deadline for that is coming up. And all the information there is at actransit.org//realign.
Commissioner announcements? I'm looking at you, Ken.
Happy holidays.
Okay, I guess that's it for announcements. Future agenda items.
How about Brighton and Cornell?
Yeah, I mean, like, it would be interesting to see what, so, because the treatments they're asking for is not major road work or bump outs or anything. They're just asking for more stop signs, and it would be interesting to have a discussion about slowing traffic down. I mean, in that area generally, with just more stop signs, and what are the impediments? What are the trade-offs?
But we have a plan that was approved a long time ago that hasn't been implemented yet. So I guess,
Which some commissioners haven't really seen.
Yeah.
so I guess, should we revisit
Maybe an
that?
update on that plan would be the most appropriate thing. And we're coming back with, you mentioned in the first quarter of the year, with an update on traffic calming, and perhaps as part of that, looking at just, hey, here's what's in the North Albany traffic calming plan and what our timeline is relative to the sewer project. If by then we have a better sense of the timeline on that.
A brief question. I drove Brighton because of this concern the other day, and it's pretty consistent that there's a stop sign at every other block, and then one extra one around the school. My concern about stop signs is if you put in too many, people start ignoring them. So if you had one at every block, people start just blowing through them.
I mean,
So
they blow through them anyway.
This is getting into the agenda item, so in terms of what we want to put on the agenda.
This is future agenda items, right?
Yeah.
Right, but we can't talk about it, but I will say that there are some ideas about how to address that issue that we can discuss.
I agree, definitely putting that into the future agenda. And I do concur with you about the stop sign. That's where all the policemen are just stationed there. They got a lot of ticket every day because nobody stops. Yeah, okay.
We'll cover it when it's on the agenda, but yes, we'll find a way to revisit the North Albany traffic calming plan as part of a future agenda item.
Could staff send the most recent versions of the North Albany traffic calming plan and the Brighton traffic calming as well to the commission? Because I haven't seen them, and I've looked a couple of times and gotten confused as to what the most recent version is.
So I wanted to ask about a couple other traffic calming things that have come up in public comment. The Santa Fe between Marin and Solano, is there anything for the commission to act on there, or is it just a matter of staff implementation of what's already been decided?
The commission has already recommended that block proceed to traffic calming design. So the next step is for staff to bring concepts to the residents and then to the commission.
Okay, so that'll get to us when it's ready. And then the other block that we didn't talk about yet tonight but came up in public comment was Peralta between Sonoma and Marin. Is the hilly block of Peralta, is that something that is there a process underway around that?
They've requested traffic calming, I believe, so it would be sort of the one step back of reviewing traffic survey data to see which blocks get recommended.
So again, that's not ready for the commission to look at. You have a process underway, and when it's ready, it'll come to us. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Anything else in future agenda items? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.